Fox News Alert. Violent, chaotic. This is Chicago. Another weekend of this. Federal agents were forced to fend off violent rioters who were throwing rocks at them and screaming and cursing at them. And the White House has authorized at least 300 Illinois National Guard troops to try to deal with the growing crime crisis. And just today, Illinois filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration over the deployment of help in that city. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Outside Chicago, Broadview is the site of an illegal immigrant processing center that has been in our focus for days now. Border Patrol agents there are in danger, and they had to call in local help for a massive group of protesters which surrounded them. All of this over the weekend. Chicago police officers say their bosses ordered them to stay away. Listen to the dispatch audio here.
And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that for 999. Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
We're not sending anybody over to that location. The nation's largest police union with full-throated condemnation. The group's president said members are shocked and appalled, adding they believe that when an officer calls for assistance, you answer, no matter what. We are seeing all of this with our own eyes, but Democrats say they don't need any help from President Trump. And they're even trying to flip the switch and blame the president.
They want mayhem on the ground. They want to create the war zone so that they can send in even more troops.
It's a misuse of the National Guard. They're not needed in this particular role.
There is no emergency here in Chicago or in the state of Illinois. The only crisis that we have is the chaos that has been caused by Donald Trump and his administration.
Senior correspondent Mike Tobin is in Broadview with more on this. Mike.
And Harris, we're hearing from a lot of rank-and-file Chicago cops who say that they are outraged that they were ordered to stand down after federal agents were attacked. The communication for the stand down appears to have come from the chief of patrol himself over the communications platform with the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, reading very clearly, no units will respond to this. Multiple police sources have confirmed that that message is authentic, and it is backed up by audio of the stand-down order.
So the chief of patrol, clear everybody up. We're not responding over there.
All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending, waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
Now, the official statement from Chicago Police Department reads, CPD responded to the scene to document the incident. CPD officers were also on the scene to maintain public safety and traffic control. It happened in Brighton Park. The scene was triggered when two individuals allegedly rammed a Border Patrol vehicle with their cars. Border Patrol agents shot the driver of one of the allegedly attacking vehicles. The drivers are now charged federally, but the incident triggered a riot. That's when the calls for help went out. Now, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson just moments ago dodged questions about whether that order tracks back to him, but he says he doubts the narrative of the Border Patrol agents.
They claimed it was defensive fire, but frankly, we cannot trust anything that comes out of the administration. We have a rogue, reckless group of heavily armed mass individuals roaming throughout our city that are not accountable to the people of Chicago. Their actions put all Chicagoans at risk.
And we knew this was coming, but the Illinois Attorney General has just made it official. The state of Illinois is now suing the Trump administration, claiming that the president is using American soldiers to punish his political enemies. Harris, back to you.
Mike Tobin, thank you very much. Let's go to Jono Caldwell, my first guest, Fox News political analyst. So, Jono, you were home in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that has been your childhood and adult home. And you talked with people about this. Are the elected officials listening to the citizens?
Absolutely not, Harris. And I'll tell you, I had an event for the Caldwell Foundation for Public Safety. We had hundreds of people there, white and black almost evenly, Democrats and Republicans, all saying the same thing. They want President Trump's help. Those pleas, those begs and cries have been ignored by Brandon Johnson. They've been ignored by J.B. Pritzker. And it's no surprise the images we're seeing on our screens right now. Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker have been setting the stage for this kind of chaos for weeks. Ever since President Trump said that he wanted to go into Chicago and help clean it up, they've been setting the stage saying, hey, we got to stand up as Chicagoans and push back on them. This is what the mayor has been saying. So it is no surprise to me that they're doing this and now they're trying to hide their hands, especially with what we see with the Chicago police. How dare they? People are in need of help. Send the police officers. But you imagine why crime has been so bad, because the mayor there has been using the police department as a political pawn, not responding to calls. This is absolutely unfortunate and not what we should have in any American city, Harris.
Look, we were in that city for a couple of reasons last summer. One was the NABJ debacle, where President Trump, then candidate, visited. You were there. I was there. The other, of course, for the DNC. We have seen Chicago, much previous to this situation, unhinged. We've seen the fence lines go up to try to, protect a convention-going public, and then they go down after everybody starts to leave town and everything folds back in, and there's chaos. Is the mayor at this point, based on all that we have seen up close, Giano, trying to use the cover of, protesting ICE to cover up the crime stuff that he hasn't dealt with since he's been in office?
Whatever they can use is a distraction from their failures. Keep in mind, Brandon Johnson has an approval rating of about 5%, the lowest rated mayor in the history of the city of Chicago. He has continuously failed on this issue. So whatever cover they can use, they will use. We have, as of estimates, almost 500,000 undocumented people in the state of Illinois. There's a lot of work to be done, and I want to congratulate Todd Lyons, the ICE acting director, for being so surgical with sending teams in and certainly keeping Americans informed as to what ICE is experiencing on the ground. These things matter. They very much matter. And the people of Chicago are happy to see those who came into their city and committed crime against the citizens there, to see them leave. That's what we should all want as Americans. We want safe cities. We want safe streets. We want our kids to be able to go to school without the fear of coming back in a body bag. And that's what we've seen too many times in the city of Chicago.
It seems like a singular responsibility and job for those elected officials. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem highlighted just how dangerous things have gotten for her agents. Watch together.
They're making plans to ambush them and to kill them. We have specific officers and agents that have bounties that have been put out on their heads. It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them. They've released their pictures. They've sent them between their networks, and it's an extremely dangerous situation and unprecedented. So we've put protective detail around those individuals, changed some of our operations to keep our officers safe.
Well, thank the good Lord, they are professionals. And nothing has come to that. But it's their professionalism that we lean on, because it sounds like the elected officials don't care about their safety.
100%, Harris. And I got to tell you, knowing what we've experienced in our country as of late, 2 assassination attempts on President Trump, Charlie Kirk assassinated, the rhetoric from the left about ICE has been extreme. And my concern is the National Democratic Party and, of course, the local officials, whether they be in California, Illinois, wherever they are, they have to turn down this rhetoric. You see what she just said, $10,000 to kill an ICE agent. This is not what we stand for as Americans, and it should be condemned from the Democratic Party. But I have yet to hear that at this point, Harris.
Yeah, I'm waiting for censures to fly. I mean, they're fueling this. And look, you can call names. They're not even shy about it on the left. All right, Giano, got to let you go. Thank you so very much for being in focus.
But we're going to begin here with this. Crime ravaging Chicago over the weekend. 5 dead, 25 hurt, and a zero-tolerance policy from the White House. President Trump sending 400 National Guard troops from Texas to Illinois. The media in an uproar over it, right on cue, of course. But the administration today shutting all that down.
You guys are framing this like the president wants to take over the American cities with the military. The president wants to help these local leaders who have been completely ineffective in securing their own cities. And we have already seen there's a positive formula for that. Look at Washington, D.C. The murder rate has declined significantly. Our streets are safer. People who live here feel safer. All of you in this room, I know you do, you just won't admit it. And it's a proven system that works, and the president wants to make America's cities safe again. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Safety not a selling point to local officials in Illinois. They much prefer the fever dream of the Handmaid's Tale, the takeover of the authoritarian government, much more than the safety of Chicagoans.
Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities. Donald Trump's deranged depiction of Chicago as a hellhole, a war zone, and the worst and most dangerous city in the world was just complete BS.
I'll tell you exactly what is BS, the way things are working with law enforcement in Chicago. Take a look at this and what's going on with the chain of command in Chicago. Sources confirming to Fox News that Chicago police officers were instructed by their chief of patrol to not respond to ICE agents after they asked for help with a swarm of protesters. Now, this dispatch screenshot accompanied this audio.
And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that per 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
I know you just heard that with your own ears, but the Chicago Police Department is saying it's all misinformation.
There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the Chief of Patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation. I'm not sure until we get to our after action, all of the exact language that was there. But I have had a conversation with the Chief of Patrol who was concerned about officers showing up on the scene. Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event.
That's not the truth, according to some officers. Quote, two longtime ranking Chicago police sources sharply rejected the department's assertion that officers responded to calls for help from ICE agents who were rammed and surrounded by protesters on Saturday, telling Fox News the official statement is, in their words, cover their ass BS. Meantime, the effort to block Trump's National Guard already taking root in Portland thanks to a ruling from a federal judge. It's a city Trump says is in desperate need of help.
Portland is burning to the ground. You have agitators, insurrectionists. The governor, the mayor, the politicians are petrified for their lives.
Mr. President,
and you have a judge like that, that judge ought to be ashamed of him.
The move by that judge slammed as well by Stephen Miller. He wrote this on X. There is no legal distinction between a state volunteering guardsman to guard the border and volunteering guardsmen to guard a federal immigration facility. Either we have a federal government, a supremacy clause, and a nation, or we don't.
Mike Tobin in Chicago, thank you very much. With that, we bring in Laura Ingraham, host of the Ingraham Angle. We just watched Laura, the superintendent, say that there was never a command to stand down for the Chicago Police Department. You see the evidence that is contrary to that, but this video is just incredible. What's your take on what you're seeing in Chicago, Laura?
I watched his entire presentation. And it was long, and it reminded me of something else, Martha. Remember, it depends on what the meaning of the word is from Bill Clinton.
I do.
You have listened closely to what he said. I would never tell anyone to, quote, stand down. Well, the transcript doesn't say stand down, does it? It said, we're not going to be sending anyone over there. So, you know, I don't know if that's the game he's playing there, but the transcript does not lie, nor does the dispatch audio itself. They made a decision not to assist federal authorities. Now, they may claim, you know, we were still processing the other scene where they had the other unrest, but they did not send manpower when it was requested. And now there's like the 38 or 41 minutes before people ended up responding to help those federal officials. But we have people's lives on the line. Okay, this is a very dangerous situation. And they made a decision not to deploy resources to assist federal authorities. And they got caught. And now they're trying to kind of, well, no, we work together. We don't collaborate, but we support one another. That was also an odd phrasing on his part. So I didn't find it compelling in the slightest. Although in some cases he did say, well, you know, you can't box in law enforcement officers, whether they're federal, state, or local. Right. Well, that's just common sense. I mean, I don't think that was any great revelation on his part.
Yeah, he said that, you know, if you're ramming a federal agent's car, you should expect that there's going to be ramifications for that. I think a lot of this comes from the top, right, in Chicago, in terms of the way that they are going to receive this. Here's Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, talking about this at 10 a.m. in Chicago. Watch this.
A couple of years ago, I said very candidly that the right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I want that to sit in right now, because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and people across America.
That's pretty strong stuff, Laura.
Yeah, well, what does he expect is going to come after that? I mean, he's not a stupid person. And you use words like Hitler or Stalin or Nazi, or you're declaring war on your own people, which is ludicrous. Of course, Donald Trump loves America's cities. We all know that. He loves New York, loves Chicago. He thinks they can return to their former, stellar selves. And that's what he's trying to help here. Now, you might disagree around the edges of some of the, decisions that are made. I think he's doing what needs to be done here. But that's different from saying he's declaring war, and this is a federal, quote, invasion of the city, which they also said today, Portland and Chicago. So this police superintendent is hearing it from Pritzker, the governor, and hearing it from Brandon Johnson. And no one is going to convince the average American watching this that doesn't have an effect on the superintendent, Mr. Snelling. I don't believe it for a moment.
Laura, what do you think is the ultimate impact of all of this? Because as you point out, President Trump wants to make the cities of America safer. I think you're absolutely right when you say he loves America's great cities and wants them to be restored to their greatness. Politically, socially, what's the impact of these presence of National Guard in these cities?
I think we're going to see decreases in crime. You're going to have we saw it in D.C., obviously, a little different because it's a federal city, a federal district, as you know. So they have more leeway in D.C. And longer deployments. But in the areas of the cities where federal facilities have been under siege for weeks and sometimes months, that will end. And those individuals will be prosecuted in federal court, not state court, where you have more, you tend to have more activist judges. But in federal proceedings, these individuals are playing cute with their little masks and little early Halloween get-ups. They're going to find themselves in real legal trouble. I think that's going to have a big and positive effect. And I think the Trump administration's messaging on this has to be, we love these cities. We're going to restore these cities. Unfortunately, we don't have willing partners on the other side of the aisle, which is sad, because if they did assist a little bit, Martha, or just, said, let's do this together, I think Trump is willing to sit down with anybody and say, give me your ideas. How could we maybe improve this, or what would you do? I honestly think he'd bring Pritzker in and these guys and say, tell us your ideas. Yeah. And they would work together. I think the Democrats are going to look really unreasonable here.
We see what's happening in Memphis, where they're just, the response is, well, we've got a lot of guns off the street, a lot of criminals off the street. That's going to make it safer for people to walk around the city of Memphis, which is their hope. And, a little coordination might go a long way in these situations. But the language of Brandon Johnson saying the President of the United States has declared war on the people of Chicago and the people across America. Very dangerous indeed. Laura, thank you. It's great to see you this afternoon. We'll look forward to your show tonight.
Thank you, Martha.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says the president ordered 400 members of the Texas National Guard to be deployed to Portland, Oregon, and Chicago, Illinois, and other locations as Democrats across the country are rejecting assistance from President Trump to handle the major crimes taking place in their cities.
The idea that we will militarize these cities, that we will impose the U.S. military on the mayors and governors of those cities and states should be unthinkable.
They want mayhem on the ground. They want to create the war zone so that they can send in even more troops.
It's a misuse of the National Guard. They're not needed in this particular role. If President Trump really wanted to fight crime, then maybe he should stop defunding the police.
Joining me now to weigh in is former DHS Deputy Assistant Secretary and former ICE Director Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, good morning. It's great to see you. So a whole lot going on when it comes to this. But what it boils down to this morning is that the president is trying to send out-of-state National Guard troops into places like Portland and Chicago, where these ICE facilities have come under repeated attack. But you just heard Democrats there, Adam Schiff and J.B. Pritzker, say this is an invasion of federal agents and the president is trying to militarize cities. How do you view what the president is doing?
Well, I don't think J.D. Pritzker has very strong ground to stand on, and I'm not sure he even wants to. But they, including him, but all the officials in Chicago are doing everything to undermine ICE from doing their job, and they're also basically encouraging these rioters and protesters. And that story you were just playing earlier about the police not helping Border Patrol agents, well, President Trump has a responsibility not only to enforce immigration law, but to keep these agents safe. And people like J.B. Pritzker essentially just puts his own political interest ahead of the citizens of Chicago and certainly ahead of law enforcement, because we know this increases his standing in the Democratic Party to be opposing Trump and to be for open borders. Just as you know, he was all over the shows this weekend because this is good for him, but it's entirely appropriate, particularly in light of what's been going on lately. Portland, the same thing. We've had, I think, 140 arrests outside of the ICE facility just this year. They need to be able to do their job, and if they need National Guard to do it, meaning ICE needs to be able to do their job, they should have it.
Yeah, and you have Kristi Noem saying that cartels are putting bounties on the heads of federal agents as well. And when it comes to that situation that unfolded in Chicago, a crazy situation over the weekend where there was these protesters that were blocking these federal agents in with their cars. One woman was shot. She ended up having a gun in her car. So if the governor of Illinois, and I'm sure he doesn't want to see things like this happening, wouldn't it be beneficial to even the protesters that are protesting for the National Guard to be sent down there so that these situations don't spiral out of control?
I think it would be. I have to say, I don't think J.B. Pritzker wants it to calm down. I think this elevates him. And, you know, everything he says and does indicates that. He tells Kristi Noem to go home, even though he knows she has every right to be there, meaning the DHS has every right to be there. It's truly shocking, truly dangerous. But if he wanted to help things, he could say, hey, we'll cooperate, help you get the most serious criminals out of here. But he's yet to do that because, frankly, I don't think he wants to.
Okay, so there's also some developments when it comes to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the accused MS-13 gang member that a lot of Democrats called a Maryland dad. A judge says that his removal orders will stand. So that means that he could be deported. But there is also one more hearing in the case today, and that has to do with vindication on the part of the federal government. Explain what's going on there.
Yeah, so the criminal case in Tennessee, there's a hearing to decide whether or not the government's charging him for the human trafficking was vindictive prosecution, meaning essentially it was retaliatory for him exercising his immigration rights. Ultimately, however the judge decides, it doesn't affect his deportation and he's going home. But the interesting thing about this, to defend the government, they stumbled essentially upon the information of his human trafficking, meaning this administration, when they looked into this case, and they basically caught him red-handed. That Tennessee stop when he was caught with all the illegal migrants in his, I think, a van. And that was something the Biden administration actually was just derelict in duty, not prosecuting. So ultimately, I think the government probably wins this hearing, but it doesn't matter. Kilmer Abrego Garcia will never be the Maryland man again. Yeah. He's gone.
Well, let's hope this chapter that saw a sitting senator in El Salvador to support this alleged gang member and wife beater, let's hope that chapter quickly comes to an end. Jonathan, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Got it.
Let's bring in the acting ICE Director, Todd Lyons, to join us right now. Director, I mean, you get a call on the radio, 1033, an officer assists call, you show up. What do you make of not only the audio evidence, but also the real-life experience of your federal agents, of them not showing up to the call?
Hey, Lawrence, yeah, it's sad because seriously, all law enforcement will respond to any other brother or sister in law enforcement that's in need. And that's what didn't happen here in Chicago. You know, you have 30 Border Patrol agents that are being swarmed, pinned in, attacked. You have a domestic terrorist that was doxing agents and officers. She has a firearm in the vehicle. They have to return fire. Yet the officers of Chicago PD are told to stand down. It just shows where we're at right now with the sad state of law enforcement going on in Illinois, is the fact that you had other federal officers under attack, yet because of politics and because of the way some people feel about immigration enforcement, they did not come to the aid of federal law enforcement officers.
You also have bounties now, according to the Secretary of Homeland Security, against some of your officers as well?
We are, yeah. We can't really get into it because of criminal intelligence in some of the cases we're working, but we've seen an uptick in actual bounties, photos of agents and agency leadership as being targets of attack by gangs and cartels. It really just has to stop. And again, all the men and women of ICE are doing are going out there and enacting the laws that Congress has written. It's a law enforcement mission. We do it every day. We've been doing it for decades. Yet right now, the men and women of ICE are in the crosshairs of some of the most extreme leftist terrorists.
Yeah, and it's coming from the criminals, but it's also coming from elected officials, too, with some of the rhetoric that they're putting out there. Let's play some of it from the Sunday shows. Let's watch it.
They broke windows, they broke down doors, they ransacked the place, and there were people that were held, elderly people and children zip-tied. Elderly people held for 3 hours at a time. They are the ones that are making it a war zone. They need to get out of Chicago.
If anybody is targeting anyone, it is out-of-control ICE agents targeting, again, zip-tying children, throwing reporters onto the ground, separating children from their mothers, trying to convince schools to turn over kids from public schools. They are ranging through the streets of Chicago, trying to intimidate everyday, ordinary citizens.
So the zip ties are used for law enforcement to cuff people as well when you have a lot of folks that you're dealing with. But explain, Mr. Director, the zip tying controversy.
Well, first off, Lawrence, what was really sad is a lot of these elected officials haven't had boots on the ground. They haven't seen what the men and women of ICE are going through. Secretary Noem went and put herself in harm's way to make sure the men and women were supported, and she showed what true leadership was because she got on the ground and she saw exactly what's going on. Now, to the controversy about that raid on a seized apartment complex that TDA, Attorney General took over, right, that the city didn't take any action on. Of course, when we go to a scene, we have to secure everyone at the scene to make sure it's safe for all law enforcement. But we've seen so many AI fake photos of supposed ICE and Border Patrol agents zip tying small children. That is just not the case. What they need to do is realize that ICE isn't a masked Gestapo or the Nazis just indiscriminately rounding people up. That was a criminally based intelligence law enforcement mission that was done by the FBI, Border Patrol, and Homeland Security investigations. It was a great operation that the city of Chicago didn't take any action on that apartment complex, whether you'd had known gang members, Trinidad and Tobago, which are terrorists, terrorizing that neighborhood. And we went ahead and we stepped in and we intervened. That's what people need to be focused on. They need to learn the facts and not listen to the rhetoric from the left.
Yeah, they're more concerned about the children being temporarily detained, not the fact that they were around in the same apartment complex of Trinidad and Tobago, a known terrorist organization that the president has declared. Director, you stay safe out there. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Lawrence. Appreciate it.
Meanwhile, in Chicago, sources telling Fox News police there were told to actually stand down on helping ICE agents who are in danger. Mike Tobin has this story for us, all the details. Hi, Mike.
And Dana, we've got a lot of rank-and-file Chicago police officers behind the scenes telling us that they are outraged that the stand-down order went out to them after federal agents were attacked. The order appears to have come through a communication from the chief of patrol over the communication through the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, reading, "No units will respond to this." Multiple police sources have confirmed to us the message is authentic, and it is backed up by audio of the stand-down order.
And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that per 999, chief of patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
In an official statement, CPD says officers did respond, writing, quote, CPD responded to the scene to document the incident. CPD officers were also on the scene to maintain safety and traffic control. Now, chaos was triggered when, according to federal prosecutors, two individuals used their cars to ram the cars of Border Patrol agents. One of the agents shot a driver of one attacking vehicle. Those attackers are now charged federally. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says the facts need to play out.
We don't have a lot of facts. Remember, these are the same folks who killed a person, unarmed person, just a couple of weeks ago in Franklin Park. At first, they said that the officer had been threatened with his life. The reality of it and the truth of it has now come out, and that wasn't the case. They killed somebody. They are just putting out their propaganda, and then we've got to later determine what actually happened.
300 Illinois National Guardsmen have now been called up for a 2-month deployment to Chicago. What you're looking at right now is video of the scene that triggered that particular radio call. Tear gas and pepper balls were deployed into the crowd after agents said they were attacked. But meantime, as I just mentioned, 300 Illinois National Guardsmen have been called up for a 2-month deployment to Chicago to protect federal personnel and property. Also, Texas National Guardsmen, 400 of them, have been called up for deployment to both Illinois, to Portland, and an undetermined location. Back to you, Dana.
All right, Mike, thank you.
Why is it that a governor wouldn't accept free help from regardless? I mean, whether it's National Guard or the military or anybody. And then we have a governor get up and say, oh, it's safe, we can handle it. He can't handle it. He's an incompetent guy.
That was President Trump today sounding off on his crime crackdown and calling out Democrat leaders running some of America's biggest blue cities. It comes as a federal judge blocks him from sending National Guard troops to stop the anti-ICE violence exploding in Portland. And now Chicago and Illinois fighting for the same outcome. They've sued the administration over its move to send troops into the Windy City, where this weekend all hell broke loose. Watch this. Federal authorities opened fire on a woman who was allegedly armed with a gun shortly after their vehicle rammed and blocked in by a group of cars. And in a separate incident, Chicago police accused of denying calls to help federal agents who were surrounded by an angry mob. Chicago PD denies that.
Were they told to stand down? Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down, because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us. And it's the same thing that we do on our side. When someone is in trouble, we're going to step in.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson are ramping up their resistance to ICE's presence in their state. Watch here.
Trump and the thuggery that his agents have brought has actively made us less safe.
The right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I want that to sit in right now, because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago. The order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids.
All right, well, to start here, Jesse, I think it seems increasingly difficult for Democrats to claim that there's nothing to see here when federal agents are literally getting attacked and you have it on camera.
So ICE has every right to enforce immigration law. It's the same immigration law that Congress wrote. If Democrats don't like the law, they can change it, or they can win an election, and they can put the ICE agents back on the bench where they were for 4 years. You cannot nullify federal immigration law through anti-ICE zones, violence. You can't do it. It's Confederate action, and the federal government has every right to deploy federal resources to protect federal action that's being obstructed. This is like basic stuff. And they're using really disgusting violence to protect a cheap supply of labor. When have Democrats done that before? Do they really want a rematch of the Civil War? They're doing really awful things, too. They're shooting lasers in eyes of people. They're spitting on them. They're threatening them. They're assaulting them. There's now $10,000 bounties the cartels have put on agents' head because they're getting doxxed and they want to put a death warrant out on them. And the Democrats don't want them to have a right to privacy. They used to love right to privacy, and now they can't have a right to privacy when they wear a mask. I do want to talk about, because I'm the ombudsman for the legacy media, a lie that needs to be debunked about zip ties. You keep hearing Democrats, and I know Jessica will bring this up eventually, about ICE agents zip tying children. Well, I looked into it. And when you do a raid on an apartment complex with 37 illegal aliens, and a couple of them are Tren de Agua, and the guy's living in an apartment building with a 17-year-old girl, and they can't prove that they're related, it's law to escort the girl, detain her, and bring her to a either state facility or a guardianship so she can't be exploited anymore. Tren de Aragua is notorious for sex trafficking. You can't just allow these people to live together. And for Democrats to say they care about the children all of a sudden, they lost 300,000 of them. They lost them to sex slavery, to sweatshops. They're living in squalor now, and they didn't care. They're just using it now as a talking point.
Jessica, were you going to bring up zip ties, or would you like to now?
I wasn't going to, but I'm always down to talk about zip-tied children. So Jesse didn't really debunk anything. He used an example of a 17-year-old girl, but the case that the Democrats were making about this was based on the eyewitness testimony of people who lived in that apartment complex, which ran at first on local ABC. So you should go watch that.
One woman.
Okay,
she said
the
a
woman
minor was zip tied.
Okay, and it's all fine. That's the thing.
What would
I
you
understand
like
that
to do when you find a young girl in the custody of a Tren de Aragua member? What would you do?
I'm glad you didn't pronounce it in your full accent, though, the second time that you did it. It makes you more serious of a human being. But I don't think that that woman was talking about your 17-year-old person who was being sex trafficked. And either way, we'll find out more of it as time goes on. But you would certainly not deny the fact that ICE didn't need to pull all of those American citizens out of their homes in order to get at the Tren de Aragua members that they were going for. You would also, I would hope, not deny the fact that the judge who ruled against the deployment to Oregon is not some lefty. She was a Bush-appointed U.S. attorney. She was on Ken Starr's team. And I love this. I just, love a good quote when she's talking about what's going on in Portland and how you can actually look at the footage and see that it's on one square block and it's not like the mess everyone portrays it to be, similar to what happened in L.A., that Trump's deployment was simply untethered to the facts. The Trump administration is getting pushed back left, right, and center. The American people are saying no to this, and the court system is saying no to this. You have judges who have been appointed by every president from Reagan up until Donald Trump and Joe Biden himself saying you cannot do this.
No, you don't.
Chicago journalists are suing.
Chicago
journalists are suing DHS for having excessive force used against them. And I know you love a good poll. I'm going to lead the A block with it. CBS. Trump is now -10 on immigration. 58% oppose using the National Guard, 70% of independents, 61% oppose using active duty military in our American cities. They are trying to militarize the country. And he says, and Caroline Levitt echoed it today in the press briefing, well, he just wants to work together. He's not picking up the phone and calling J.B. Pritzker. He's saying, I'm coming to take your cities. And that's what he told all of the generals last week when he had them assembled.
What are the Democrats in that poll?
What? In that poll, that's not how an answer.
What's the Democrats rating?
58% opposed using the National Guard. It's not
they're
about
like
Democrats.
20 points below what the Republicans are, but that's okay.
That's actually not true in this poll. It's 40% versus 32% approval, I think.
I want to get Kaylee in here because I was going to ask you one thing about J.B. Pritzker, but now I've changed my mind. Because on the legal front, it's just there's so many legal cross currents. I don't know. I feel like Kerry and Homeland. Like, where can I figure out where this is going? How do we get to some sort of resolution before somebody gets killed?
Yeah, so first you cite the district court judge. I would note that the highest authority we have currently is the Ninth Circuit, who reversed the district court judge in the LA case. So this very well could be reversed by the Ninth Circuit. I think it will be. When you look at the DOJ filing, I bring my primary sources when I'm on with Jessica, always. The 169-page DOJ filing requesting an emergency motion to reverse that judge. What you find in it is this. Their legal authority is 10 U.S.C. 12406. They say in 2 cases, Donald Trump can federalize the National Guard. 1 case, you're unable to implement the laws of the United States. You cited the laws of the United States. It's immigration law as passed by Congress. Unable to enforce that because ICE agents are being targeted. Number 2, you can federalize the Guard if there's a rebellion against the authority of the government. Well, ICE's government. There's a pretty clear rebellion against this authority. Go ask the Dallas ICE agents who were targeted with anti-ICE bullets. This is a rebellion against U.S. government sources. And also what's interesting, you only have to get 10 pages into this lawsuit. Here's what you find, just to add to Jesse's list here. There's someone who wielded a firearm at ICE in Portland. There's an individual, you mentioned the rocks, the sticks. Listen to this. Officers have been bitten, kicked, shot with paintballs, threatened with a machete and a knife, and assaulted with potentially blinding lasers. The protesters literally lit a material on fire up against the courthouse, and other protesters threw accelerants on the fire. That's just one fire. There was another fire, too. That one was done with motor oil over the building of Portland ICE. Donald Trump is on strong legal footing. I can't speak to the one federal judge. I think they're going to get reversed. The Ninth Circuit sided with Trump once. I think they'll do it again. You can't be biting ICE officers and lighting their building on fire.
Okay, so Charlie, weekends are supposed to be like easy, right?
Right.
You go on Fox and Friends weekend, you think, oh, you're going to have like fun, you're going to jump around outside on some trampolines, do some bull riding. But no, like the weekends, it feels like this is when these protests are ratcheting up. And it feels like so much news is happening at the time. And as I understand it, I believe it was yesterday morning, Secretary Noem was on with you all saying that there have been threats against them for kidnapping, for ICE agents. And she says that the threats are escalating. Do you feel over time, as you've been covering all of these things happening as it gets since the summer, that it's getting worse before it can get better?
Oh, I think it's definitely getting worse. And the fact that we were actually talking to Secretary Noem before that interview where she just sort of casually mentioned that this was going on. And we're like, holy goodness, are you kidding me? And the idea that you actually, and they're investigating who's behind this and who's putting up the money for these bounties, but $2,000 for attacking or kidnapping an ICE agent, $10,000 for killing an ICE agent, this is shocking. And, I get, on a legal front, I get squeamish about sending federal troops into cities to enforce the laws, but this is not anything normal. This is something very different. And like you said, Jesse, these federal officers it's not a right to enforce the law. They have an obligation to enforce the law. This is not a choice. These are duly elected, enacted laws. They have no choice. And to have Brandon Johnson, who is an illiterate buffoon, up there ratcheting it all up, saying that we're going to take a more drastic response. How are you going to get more drastic than violent assaults on these agents? The idea that we're going to have ICE-free zones, and I hate this because whether I disagree with you or not, or whether you're a Democrat or whatever, I hate watching these scenes, and I hate language that ratchets it up. But for him to invoke the Civil War, are you freaking kidding me? Going back to the illiterate buffoon that he is, I don't think he understands his history. And I know it's sort of unfashionable to study the history of the Civil War, but it might do some people some good to realize that the first shots fired in the Civil War were by locals in Charleston Harbor firing on Fort Sumter. And so this may be analogous to the Civil War, but Brandon Johnson is not on the side that he thinks that he is. And I don't think that we can sort of pull back from this. And the way you pull back from this is to enforce the laws and respect the laws that elected people have put on the books.
The more that they talk about ICE as jackbooted thugs and disappearing people, it is asking for more of this.
And fascist.
Yes, right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.